Hello. Your attention, please. Oh, that wasn't so bad. Welcome to our social media session. It is entitled From Newbie to Tweep in 90 Minutes, Twitter 201 for Municipal Politicians. Part of the point of that title and a bit of the lingo, the reason why we're calling it Twitter 201 is we're going to assume a certain amount of familiarity with with Twitter and social media. So we're not going to be going through all the very simple basics. So if it's totally new to you, it may be a bit quick, but I think it'll still be valuable for you. We have three great speakers. One is currently, AWOL is not the correct term because he has permission. Oh, and he's just arriving now. So we had some technical glitches with his PowerPoint presentation. So it's entirely our fault, not his fault. All right, so to my left, I have Mayor Brad Woodside from Fredricton. He's also, of course, our second vice president. And his main key takeaway that he wants you to have today from his talk is deliver your message and keep it short and sweet. In the middle, we have Jeff McConnell from Virden, Manitoba, and he's going to help you, give you some tips on how to use Twitter and possibly Facebook to add to your community's messaging goals. And on my far left, we have Mayor Madeleine Redfern from Iqualuit, and she is going to be sharing the merits of having a professional and personal account. Shall we start with Madeleine?
Let's see if this works. Wonderful. So just curious, right off the bat, how many people actually have a Twitter account in this room? Impressive. Okay. And how many use it professionally? Okay. And how many also have a personal account and use it personally? So that's a good show that most of the people, or a significant portion of the people in this room, are on Twitter and are using it professionally. And I've chosen to actually do both. And instead of just having one account and using it personally and professionally, I do have two accounts. And my first professional account is at Mayor Madeleine, and my second account is at Mad Inuk. And so it's kind of a play on words, yes. And I do use them very differently from each other, in so much that Mayor Madeleine really focuses on communicating as my sort of elected office position with my community, with my northern or actually national media, with different organizations, so like Red Cross, Arctic College, as well as with persons who are generally interested in my community. Sometimes because they're going to be coming up to Iqualuit and want some information, or they're just generally interested in the north. And so I tend to message in that persona. And then I also tweet or retweet articles about the community. So if there's Nanatsiak News just put out some articles, there's different stories that usually happen almost on a daily basis in my community, so I'll tweet that. And then I'll also take salient statements or points within that article and tweet that specifically. So there was one about the cost of living. Our Minister of Economic Development and Housing just said in the article that the cost of living in Iqualuit for a rental unit is about $2,300 compared to the rest of Canada, which is about $835. So, because not everyone is going to read the linked article, and I want to make sure that the most important thing within that article that refers to my community, I then actually, do that as a separate tweet. And always use quotation marks when you are quoting from someone else in their study, their report, because otherwise people will construe it as your statement, and it isn't. Retweet, it's important that anytime you change, someone else's message, then I change that to an MT, a mention. Because again, I'm very aware that if someone else is, using what I've said and tweaked it a bit, it wasn't my exact quote. So I learned that actually from a social media session that I attended with the National Policing Association. So everything that I tweet, whether it's my professional account or my personal account, I'm very aware of can be construed as a mayor tweet. Even though I've made it quite clear on my personal account that this is my personal account, and nonetheless, it does happen. Thankfully, I wouldn't say that in the quotation of Mayor Madeleine to my personal tweets haven't been problematic, because if I always have to remember whatever I say, can and may be construed as a professional statement. But the media and my community, I would have to say, do recognize from if they are on Twitter, how I do use them very differently from each other. And if someone tweets me on my personal account and says, at Mad Inuk, and asks me a city question, what's happening with the water, why is the water out, when's the water gonna come back on, what's happening with the power, I will respond with my Mayor Madeleine account, because it was a professional question, and they sometimes blur the lines, but I pull it back and remind them almost sort of, politely. I'm now responding in an official capacity, not as a personal, not as me as Madeleine Redfern individual. The other thing that I found that is particularly useful for use of Twitter and actually Facebook is to also provide information about what's happening in the community. So there's a funeral service for one of our beloved elders is going to happen in a couple days. So I'll provide that. But in an emergency situation, I found it incredibly valuable, because otherwise, in the absence of information during a crisis, people or my community members are, my community members are very, anxious. It can lead to sort of misinformation that's going out. There's people in the community that, their first and natural reaction is to panic or to fearmonger, to cause other people to panic. And so to give you some examples of, how I use Twitter, we had our water main broke down. It actually made national news because we lost 4 million liters of water in a short period of time. And it was -50. It was, I think, it was the dead of winter. And so we needed to let our community know that this had happened, and that we were working on the issue, and that we needed people to conserve water. And then even once we managed to patch the main, which took actually about half a day to do, and then because of the water reserves being so low that we needed people to continue to conserve water, and then we needed them to boil the water for a period of time until the water had been tested. But, I was able to, instead of have residents in the community, get angry at us and what's happening, and furious or scared, and to correct misinformation, people then felt so much more, it was still difficult because it's an emergency situation, but they felt like they knew what was happening, and that any misinformation, was instantly corrected and caused people again to feel more at ease. And also, because social media is two-way, I don't just use it to put information out. People would say, well, do I need to boil water for, washing dishes before I wash the dishes? Does this mean I can't even wash my dishes, because there's a conservation order? And being able to say, and check with the public authorities, because that's, again, you want to make sure that the information that you're giving to your community is accurate. So I communicate a lot with my city staff and the other third-party agencies that may be involved in an emergency situation. And because I've heard the word prolific on social media, a lot of the third-party agencies like RRCMP and Nunavut Arctic College, when we had a big fire breakout, they'll actually ask me to be their main communicator with the public, because they're not on Twitter and they're not on Facebook, and they know that that is now a much faster and better way to reach your community than actually the traditional media, which is through, printed news, even if they're online, or with the radio, because we just don't, they're not working at the same pace as we are. And so we often actually find ourselves, or I find myself being the first person to actually report information. Now, my personal account, if anyone's ever checked it out, I think it's I find it more interesting because it's really my personality, my personal interests. And I'm very interested in social justice issues, law, health, housing, and such like. And if those issues, which do affect Iqualuit, then I'll tweet it under Mayor Madeleine. But sometimes it'll just be broader. It'll be a Supreme Court decision, or it's federal government is doing something that isn't specifically targeting Iqualuit, but I find it interesting, and so I'll tweet on that. And again, the engagement I find on that personal account is often way more. Well, I don't want to say risque, but it can be a little bit more passionate because I'm not as fettered, as my professional account. I just can't say enough, and probably people are very aware, the number of times, certain people have gotten into trouble from a tweet, and it's, so don't retweet, I've learned, if you are angry, just kind of walk away from, your BlackBerry, walk away from your computer, count to 10. If that's not good enough, leave the building. And really sort of, try to decide whether or not it's actually something that you are going to respond to, or respond to it at least when you've calmed down, because if you've responded in anger, you're not necessarily the most rational person at that point in time. It can, as I said, be used against you. Always take the high road. Don't stoop to the level of some of the people who are trying to engage with you from a place that I would say is not particularly nice. They may be trying to set you up, to take you down. And so I've had all sorts of nasty things, said to me, not under my Mayor Madeleine account. Interestingly, that is, I think to some extent, people have decided, I act, very, very professionally under that account, but my personal account, I have been called really unpleasant names, and just got to learn to water off the duck's back. Don't name call back. There was, and because if you're in elected office, it's very different than if, than you are just, a regular citizen. But there are times where there's one tweet that it was clever. I found it humorous. One man tweeted a Conservative Party communications manager who works for the Conservative Party, and he tweeted this man, what's it like to work for the biggest asshole in the country? And the response was, I don't know, I don't work for you. Now, see, and it was a good response, but if it'd been, I wouldn't have felt in a situation that I could have responded like that. I mean, there are times where, you can be clever, and, but again, it very much depends on what your profession is, and are you prepared to take that risk? And I think I'm quite frank as a mayor, and quite frank as a person, and I've been told, you know, sometimes I'm too frank to be a politician, but nonetheless, I feel important to speak out on issues. Twitter is one medium only, though, and I do very much use Facebook when I'm engaging with the community, especially on important issues, because majority of my residents are on Facebook. So be aware of the different audiences and the different mediums, and utilize the best mediums to reach those audiences. And I think in closing, because I've probably taken up my 15 minutes, is that I believe communication is an incredibly important part of being a politician, and I use communication, or you know, all these media tools, because I want to be aware of what's happening in my community, in my territory, in my country, and certain parts of the world. I want to be well informed. I want to be able to speak from a place of being informed. I want and feel incredibly important that as an elected official that we need to be accessible, the need to be responsive, and ultimately to be accountable. And that's how I use my Twitter accounts. Thank you.
There will be opportunity for questions at the end, so we'll just keep moving through. Next will be Mayor Brad Woodside.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. I could very easily be sitting down there. As a matter of fact, I've already learned something, and that is the sorry? I actually had Bob send me a tweet to hold a seat because he heard there was a lot of people, but that's a good thing because it shows that we're interested. The most important thing that we can do as elected people is to communicate, and to communicate as effectively as we possibly can. And this is just another vehicle to communicate. I heard about the 2 accounts. That wouldn't work for me. I guess whatever we talk about here doesn't work for all people. But I can't take off the mayor's hat and be personal. Because in my situation, it would still the next day be, did you see what the mayor said? So I have to be very careful, and rather than have a personal account where I can be more flexible, and then a mayor's account to be more professional, I have to try and stay in the middle and please everybody. The other thing, I'm up on the stage doing a presentation on social media when people expect that I am somewhat of a social media expert, which is not the case. I started Twitter back quite some time ago as an effective way to communicate, another way to communicate with people, but not just people that live in the community or around the community, but people around the world. And really didn't know what I was doing, so I was up to almost 1,000 Twitter followers and got some sort of a virus and everything and lost everybody, and I was devastated. There were people on there that I really enjoyed, so I tried to go back through and try and find everybody, and that was a pretty frustrating exercise. So now when somebody says, you're not gonna believe what people are saying about you, I don't bother going there. Or when somebody says, I can't believe the picture of you on the internet, I don't go there.
I can't believe the picture of you on the internet, to be honest with you.
That's another thing. Pictures on the internet, another news story. So, you know, I try to be very, very careful. But what I enjoy about Twitter is, you know, when the unrest was taking place in Egypt, I'm getting live tweets from people in Egypt on the ground, keeping me posted and informed as to what is going on in Egypt. And I thought that was just absolutely amazing. The communication is so, what's that? Way to go, Bob. Say that I inspired you.
He's wearing the great color for this town.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
So,
pictures right there.
hey,
Just
your
take-
presentation is next.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're taking some of my valuable time. So I really subscribe to the KISS principle, to keep it simple, stupid. I don't know a whole lot about Twitter. People think that I do because I tweet a lot. One thing that I do know, and it's nothing that I've learned, I've just sort of picked it up because most things in politics, I think, is more common sense than anything else. So exercise common sense. What I do is I have a record of responding to anybody who tweets me. I would say 95%. If somebody takes the time to send me a tweet, whether it's somebody locally that wants to know about a pothole or a street, or when's this going to be paved, or when's that going to be done, I will respond to them. Just as I will to the person in Australia who sends me a message to talk about what's going on down there. I really, truly enjoy that. Now, time consuming, it really depends on how much time you want to put into it, and I put in too much time. And another important point that I'll give you is a lot of times when I tweet, it's after the day, and I'm in the evening, and I'm by myself in my family room. Maybe I've had a couple of beer. Be careful. So you have to be very careful. You have to remember that once it's out there for good. And it is so easy for somebody just to retweet what you've said, and then all of a sudden it starts spinning around and going around all over the place. The reason that I wanted to get on Twitter in the first place, and this is rather strange, I think, rather unusual, but the communication thing was important. But I have these little sayings that I've made up over the years, and I've always wanted to share them with people, and nobody ever knew them. So I got on Twitter initially to share my sayings with people that I'm really proud of. I made these things up over the years. So it was a way to do that. Well, then it evolved into something much bigger. And all of a sudden, I'm getting close now to 11,000 followers. And I'm so excited about it. You know, when I think of social media and how important it is, I can tell you something. I have all the media following me on social media. I can guarantee you that I can send out a tweet and have all the members of the media calling me the next day or calling me that same day, and it's a big news story. Don't do it too often. Don't be the person who cried wolf. Do it very strategically. This is being webcast, and I know that some of the media are watching right now, so I shouldn't have said that.
I'm talking about it.
But I don't take advantage of it. I don't take advantage of it. I don't tweet where I am all the time. I saw, you know, one of my friends who's a politician, and, you know, all of a sudden I'm at this meeting. I'm meeting with this group. I'm at this meeting, and it goes on and on and on. And I sent him a tweet, and I said, "Are you going to tell us when you're going to the bathroom?" Too much of anything is not a good thing. That was too much, the example I just gave you. I don't think it's a bad thing to tell people where you are, but if you're busy like most municipal politicians, my whole thing could be, you know, I've attended this banquet, I've attended this function, I've cut this ribbon, I've done this, I've done that, 16 things in a day. Sooner or later, people are looking at your feed and they say, well, you know what, I'm not really too interested in that. So you gotta be very, very careful that you don't go too far in one direction, and I don't think it's a big thing to promote yourself. It's not really about promoting yourself and making people think that you're a bigger and better person. So you have to be right down there with everybody else. So when I was introduced, it said, you know, keep it short and keep it sweet. What I like about Twitter is 140 characters or less. I don't want to get on and read a blog that's 3 pages long. Not that I don't, but this kind of communication is very, very short, sweet, and to the point. When there's an accident in Fredricton, I get it on Twitter. Usually before the media, usually before the police, usually before the fire trucks. Somebody's there, everybody has a device. And the people that use Twitter like to let people know that they're the first to be able to tweet whatever's going on. So it's instantaneous. Getting back to, I should be sitting down there. I've never really taken anything in terms of how do you do it. I just did it, learned myself, and then you sort of pick it up as you go. It's like anything else, and some people are afraid of it. They're, afraid to pick up a computer or use a computer. Well, just use it. It's not going to hurt you, and all of a sudden, sooner or later, it's going to come easy to you. There's not a whole lot of things to learn about Twitter. Watch, follow, see what other people are talking about, get involved. If anybody sends you a tweet, get back to them. It's no different than the media calling you. If you say you're going to call them back, call them back. It's just Twitter etiquette. It's already been said about the people that will set you up to bring you down. Particularly important if you're in politics. Out of my 10,780 followers, I have blocked 12 people. Blocked and muted 12 people. And it was during the election campaign that I just went through in May, because people were trying to set me up. It was so obvious. And then when I blocked them and I muted them, I could see them on another stream somewhere saying, well, what kind of a politician is that? He doesn't even want to communicate with us. So my point is, with that many followers, I've only blocked 12. But I will not tolerate foolishness. I have no time for that. I have no time for negativity. I want to learn from people who are tweeting and on Twitter and following me that I follow, that they have something to say that is going to make my day a little brighter. Every Friday, I always tweet, have a great weekend, live, love, laugh, and be thankful. I don't want people unloading their problems on me and being negative, and they hate their job and all of that sort of thing. That's just not me. I want the positive side of things. I want your tweet to make me feel good. I want to try and make you feel good with my tweets. I do a lot of direct messages besides the open thing, and that's more when somebody has a personal question. So if you want to know about a pothole on Queen Street, well, that person in Australia is not too concerned about it, because first of all, they don't know where Queen Street is, and I don't know if they have a pothole down there, or mosquitoes. So I will send a direct message. I don't want to bother all my followers with trivial stuff that is important only to one person. The bottom line, when Barack Obama set up social networking and asked for $5 from every person, he got millions of dollars. So it tells you something. There's a lot of people that are connected, and with every passing day, with the evolution of technology, more and more people are getting connected. You can send a picture to your friend on Twitter, a direct message if you don't want everybody to see it. But keep it simple, stupid. That's my whole philosophy on this. It's not complicated. It's not difficult. So don't make it difficult, and don't try and complicate it. Talk to your friends that are on Twitter. Bob there for his first time. Look, he's still going. It's fun, and I'll tell you something else. It can be somewhat addictive. So you got to be careful with that, because we all have a limited amount of time. But if Bob's sitting next to somebody and has a question, well, how do you do a list? How can I get certain people on a list so I can follow them and see without going through 10,000 people? It's very simple to do. Just ask your neighbor. Ask somebody else that's on it. There's not a whole lot to know about Twitter that a friend who's on Twitter can't tell you. And then you can be sitting up here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Woodside. Now we're going to have Mayor Jeff McConnell from Virden, Manitoba, and we've managed to find your...
Yeah. Here we are in social media stuff, and we're talking about things that are using technology, and all my technology failed today. My phone has decided to take a break. I can't tweet from this event. I've been watching the tweets. It's lots of fun. I noticed, I think Tiffany Paulson's in here somewhere, is she? All the way at the back next to Councillor Bubbling. First off, I just saw that she was in here, so I think we all want to say it really loudly, don't we? Wow, what a great conference. I am coming back to Saskatoon. This dude is homegrown. I happen to grow up in the city where that actual band that wrote that song came from. Has nothing to do with Saskatoon, though. Maybe to... See, I even got music for my conference in this session. It's like it's coming. It's coming. It's up there. You guys can leave, I don't know if you're able to leave the Twitter feed up or whatever, but, like all you, okay, I guess. Anyway. So, Mayor Madeleine asked the question, how many of you are on Twitter? And most of you put your hands up. Who's not on Twitter? Perfect. Who's on Twitter and still doesn't know what to do and hasn't done very much at all with it? Perfect. Now, I know there's a couple I've talked to this weekend who now feel that they don't have to put their hand up. Truth is, they probably do, Ms. Havixbeck. Some of you, that was me. Oh, did you put your hand up? Okay, good. That was me. And Councillor Bob Long, I noticed he created a new Twitter feed this weekend, and it's his Councillor one. And he also, I think, was one of the ones who got on, then didn't know what to do. I pointed out Paula because she, I followed her a year ago. And then this weekend, she finally figured out how to follow me back. And that's where I was. And so that's why I wanted to talk to you guys a bit about this. So perhaps, since I don't have this one, if we can get up the second slide on this one, please. I won't be able to highlight anything for you guys, unfortunately. So I still feel like Brad. I still feel like I'm a relative newbie. I don't have 11,000 followers. I don't have 2 Twitter accounts either, but I totally understand Mayor Madeleine's points, and if you guys want to go that way, that makes a lot of sense. And everything's absolutely true. I adhere to the method or the madness that if I say it on there, somebody else will use it improperly if they ever desire to. So I'm always mindful of that and trying to ensure that I don't get myself into too much trouble. I started tweeting a year ago, and it was actually during a lunch with Mayor Woodside and Barry Verbanovic and a few others in Ottawa, and they were telling me about the Arab Spring stuff that they were picking up, so that part was really kind of cool to me. One of my first followers was Brad, so that was kind of fun too. It's been over a year, and I am now beyond 1,000 tweets. After this weekend, I'm over 1,100, and I think Bob should be up here presenting to you too. So it is easy, it is fun, you'll never go back, believe me. If I could have the next slide, please. Okay, so I'm giving you some ideas. My profile page says I'm the mayor of Virden. I have a community of 3,114. I do point out I'm the father of 2. I say my career and my tweets are my own. So I do put in that little hashtag everybody puts in there, the little caveat. My tweets are my own, so that people know that when I put something on the Twitter feed, it is not necessarily the position of the council of the town of Virden. And I think that's very important to do. People might still try to claim that it is, but the fact is I will stand by that particular statement throughout. Do's and don'ts and etiquette, I'm not doing that formally in mind. You have heard that from both Mayor Madeleine and Mayor Woodside. Could I have the next page, please? So this is what I did. I got on there and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know who I was talking to, I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know what people wanted to hear from me either, so I had to think about those things. And then the other question I asked, well, the people I thought I wanted to talk to, are they on Twitter? So if you can, next slide, please. This is the longest part of, it's just sort of some things I was looking at. So when I got on there, I realized there is almost nobody in my community on Twitter. I have a town of 3,000 people, and Twitter's not a big social media event in that community yet. So what am I doing? If I thought I was presenting to my community, I'm not. The message I'm delivering, I can still get to some of the people there, but that message isn't as well dispersed as I was hoping. So what I decided to do, like my Facebook page has 170 to 180 likes, and honestly, since I created it, it hasn't gone up much since then. Those people are all from Virden for the most part, so that's where my messaging for my community goes, is to my Facebook page. My Twitter feed, I'm just not sure. So when I was looking around, I clued in, just like Brad said, the media is there. So I went immediately and started to follow all of the local media in Western Manitoba. I also followed all of the Winnipeg media. I started to follow national media. I followed territorial media. And I have, whenever possible, I've tried to do that. And then by virtue of my name of my Twitter feed, like if it was mine was at Jeff McConnell, they wouldn't follow me. So I am at Virden Mayor, and they go, oh, a mayor. Again, councillors have just as much as mayors do, so use the councillor name and it should work. But they follow me back, and then they started talking to me. So, if I could have the next one. It actually did work very well. The other thing I was going to say is use hashtags. I've got on my last slide, I've got a screen capture. I'm going to talk about some of these things. It's the best one. So in our area, I use hashtag Virden, hashtag Westman, hashtag anything. This one obviously is the hashtag FCMYXE. In that Twitter feed, you'll have seen those different things. And in my last slide, I'll show you how those things work and why when you don't use them, it's like air. It's just out there. I do direct the tweet, so again, I've used the people who are here. If I want to ask Mayor Madeleine a question, I'll direct that. Or if I want to bring her attention to something, I'll direct it there. So in many cases, if it's a media person I'm trying to get in touch with, I will direct, I'll put their name into the tweet as well. So there's the overall story, the hashtag with the location of it, and then I'll attract, hopefully I'll direct it to a couple media people I think will actually want to use that story. And believe me, that works. So if I can get the next slide, please. Where I felt I've had successes for my own community. In the past year, my community has gone through a few different successful stories, including our historic odd theater. Some people in this room have been there, and it is a beautiful old theater. It's Western Canada's oldest opera house, west of Winnipeg before BC. It is 100 years old this year. It's a 500-seat theater in a community of 3,000, and it received a lot of attention. And any message I did for it was retweeted by the media regularly. Manitoba Junior Hockey League hockey team, a new team moved from Winnipeg to Virden. And that story became very, very big in the media across Manitoba, particularly in Winnipeg. And so the media kept contacting me directly around that story because of my Twitter feed. They knew how to get me because they knew I was there. So they would come to me through Twitter. As well, I've started a conversation with a CBC reporter and others around housing needs in our community. We have quite significant housing needs. Like, that's a surprise for anybody in this room. But, and ours is created largely because of the oil industry. We are in the oil portion of Manitoba, and our housing prices have risen about 300% in the past 10 years. It's been quite dramatic. So now, oh, you can't see it very well. I don't know if there's any way to expand on this, but so in this page, this is my profile page, and you can see what I've done with it as I've actually got the hockey team logo. People will go to your profile page sometimes. So I've got a local to Virden good news story as my profile backdrop, and I'm going to use that probably for a while. At the top is my my profile direction. Now, the tweets there, the top one is the one I was talking about. It's got no hashtags in it. So I don't think you can see it very well, but some of the ones that have hashtags and directions, they're a bit of a different color. So that's like a hyperlink, right? But the one at the top was a story about the oil capitals. It was a retweet by me. It was from our Virden Parks and Rec Twitter feed. Guy put it, just said, oil capitals doing well this weekend, lots of ticket sales, et cetera, something like that. And so I retweeted it. And then I looked at it and said, well, that went nowhere. It went nowhere. Unless somebody was actually looking at their phone at that point in time and saw it on the little 3-inch screen or scrolled down a bit, it went nowhere. Or unless somebody was looking through my profile and went and looked at it, they would see it. But I don't expect people to do that. But below that, you'll see some others where it's got hashtags, hashtag Westman, hashtag Virden, hashtag something else, or directed at somebody. And each one of those, each one of the ones where I do a hashtag Westman, I know that the Brandon Sun reporters and the CBC News reporter and other reporters in the area, they're always looking through those links. What they do is they actually have it as a search, like when you did the FCMYXE and all those Twitter feeds, they will go through there and they will try and pick out stories. So again, like Brad said, don't cry wolf too many times. But you never know what they're going to pick up on either, right? So it could just be a fun thing to do. They might decide that's something they want to run with. So I recommend strongly you do that. So if you are new to Twitter or have never tried it, get on, make a profile. If you have never, you created a Twitter feed and have never ever used it yet, just start using some of these simple tips, right? Certainly hashtag it, pick a story, pick something, just do a tweet, like Bob's first tweet, which we all saw, everybody was so excited for the guy here, right? And then the other thing is, as Brad pointed out, everybody who's on Twitter is a mentor. It truly happens. We all had mentors as we got into council. Twitter, everybody who's on Twitter is a mentor. The minute you get started, you get excited, you start doing it. I've learned things this morning too that I actually wrote them down because my phone wasn't working. And I will continue to learn things. And you'll be surprised by how much you have yet to learn. I'm over 1,100 tweets now. I've got 535 followers now thanks to this conference. I came here, the number up there, that was a screenshot from last weekend. I think it says 485 or something like that was my followers. Now I'm at 535 followers, mostly council colleagues now, so I'm really excited about that. And it's just a lot of fun. So the next slide, please. And there's my contact stuff. So thanks.
Thank you, Mayor McConnell. And now if there are people who would like to take some questions, maybe go to the microphone because we're webcast.
Thank you. Mayor John Lefferbeer from North Cowichan. Brad, you said a couple of things. You said it can be addictive, and you also said communicating was the most important thing we can do. I don't mean to be a wet blanket, but I'm concerned about doing things in our community and getting them done, and I see communication as a necessary part of our job, but not the most important job. And I don't have that fascination, with all due respect to Bob. Is that him behind me?
No.
I've got a busy job, a busy life, and those messages about Bob's first tweet don't fascinate me. And it's no disrespect to Bob. It's just I don't have time for that, and there's a lot of things we want to get done. So I really like your perspective, because that's where I'm at now, and I am very interested in it. I have tweeted very selectively and not very much, possibly not very well. So I'm still very interested, but I just wondered if you could comment.
Yeah, I could. And you know, Tweeter, Twit, all, you know, Twitter, tweet. Here's the point. It's a tongueful. It's a tongue twister. Here's the thing. You know what? It's different things to different people. If I put 2 hours into it, that doesn't mean you have to put 2 hours into it. If I respond to this many people, doesn't mean you have to respond to different people. You'll get something more out of it and something different than I get out of it. And we shouldn't be doing it for the same reasons. So don't feel bad if you're not on it all the time. Discover what it is best suited to you for, and then that's what you'll do. So there isn't anything that's prescribed that says you have to do this, and this. So I've just done what I really like to do, and that's what I get out of it. And it's not the same for everybody. Some people will never even get on that are in here today. But, you know, each to our own. That's a good question. It's up to you.
We'll just get the next microphone.
Good morning, panel and everyone. Ross Thompson, Mayor of Stonewall, Manitoba. My question concerns etiquette. Yesterday it used to be talking in class. Today it's cell phones during workshops and presentations. Yesterday in the plenary we saw, you know, this kind of thing, and it's very interesting. But I would ask the panel: do you not think that tweeting or sending messages or looking at receiving messages is not a distraction, and should there be some types of limits or barriers
Madeleine?
I could at least only give you my perspective. I think as has already been indicated, it's you have to use your common sense and what is the venue that you're at. But I can tell you for an event such as this, a lot of people do actually tweet and appreciate following the tweets, even as you are attending the same session, or you happen to be in a sister session because you can't be at two places at the same time, or you're not able to attend the session at all. And so I have people in my community who are following the tweets, my tweets, or those that I've retweeted, and feel like, oh, that's really interesting. But again, it's common sense. I wouldn't tweet, nor would I think it appropriate if I'm having a meeting with my premier or my minister. That wouldn't be appropriate. So you really do have to exercise judgment and realize, is this a good time to tweet? Is this not? Maybe I'll tweet afterwards, or maybe there'll be no tweets about sort of, what was discussed or exchanged in a particular meeting because it's just not appropriate.
Jeff, did you want to add anything?
No, actually, I really like that answer. It's really along the lines of, again, what's common sense, what's appropriate, what's acceptable. And obviously, when we set up a feed like that one, we're expecting people to do it. So we've kind of gone to an area where we expect that to happen. And I would have thought in this session, at least, one of the three of us might be tweeting while we're up here, but I'm not able to. So I agree, like in council meetings or anything, like when you're the one who's supposed to be involved in the communication that's the face-to-face, one would hope that you're paying attention to the communication that's face-to-face. But we're just a society that starts to go that way. I don't necessarily accept it. I don't like it necessarily, but at least tweeting's a bit quieter than talking in classroom, I guess, in that way. But
I think with the evolution of the technology, it's changing so quickly that we haven't caught up to etiquette, which takes me back once again to common sense. If you and I are together, well, let me use the dinner table on Sunday, which is a big thing at my home when the kids all come over. You're sitting at the dinner table. Do not take out your BlackBerry or your iPhone and start tweeting. That's unacceptable. So I think there's a time and a place, but this has gotten so popular that we really haven't caught up to the etiquette. So it gets down once again to common sense. When I chair my meetings of council, I do not want to look down and when we're discussing an important matter to see people tweeting, with their neighbors or somebody in Egypt, whatever it happens to be. There's a time and there's a place. And I guess you just have to exercise some common sense and some courtesy and then figure that one out until the rules come out that say you can't do this, you can't do that, which is a whole different thing that's going to cause a lot of people to tweet.
All right, let's go to the front.
Thank you. Two questions. One is email. None of you has mentioned email, and what I'm noticing as a Twitterer is that my email activity is going down, even though I continue to use it as a strong tool for communicating with the residents. That Twitter and Facebook is really kind of taking over the domain. I'm wondering your reflections on that. And the second thing, just to pursue, the thing I struggle with is, because certainly on my council, I'm from the city of Toronto, we have the ones who tweet every hour, and they'll do articles, and it's all about exposure. And I worry about, frankly, being overexposed. And so, how many really in the real world do you do a day? 5, 10, and what are the principles that you use to decide whether, because common sense is, we need a little bit more than common sense. We need to know, it would be helpful for me to get some advice on how you handle when is it good, when is it not good, when is it information overload, when are you overexposing yourself?
Starting here.
Okay, well, first of all, we all have different personalities, and also we are not all the same in so much that I am a full-time mayor, and I'm paid to be a full-time mayor, and so I am completely different than some of my neighbor communities whose mayors are only sort of attend the council meetings and community events and aren't expected to be on 24/7 in that paid capacity because they may have full-time jobs during the day. And I tweet a lot. And I don't really expect anyone to probably tweet as much as I do. And so how many tweets do I do a day? Every day is different. I can tweet a lot depending on the circumstance of my day. If I'm in a conference where I'm not the presenter and I find it particularly interesting, then I will tweet what I wish to share. And again, because I have the two accounts, it may be a Mayor Madeleine tweet, if I feel as if it's particularly important for my residents or constituents to be aware of. So I probably tweeted some stuff on the Northern Forum, because that, we were talking about issues that I know are close and dear to my constituents, but there'll be other things that, again, it might just be noise, and that no one's really particularly interested in that noise. What was the first question? I'm trying to remember.
Email versus Twitter.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I get more requests for information or questions through Twitter or Facebook from my constituents than I do from email. And actually, I find same thing with the media. Media knows that I'm much more likely to respond to them more quickly if they DM me on Twitter than if they actually email me. And also because my email system back home is not as stable. And I'll actually often tweet that. I'm like, I can't access my emails, I can't respond to them. Therefore, if you need to reach me on Twitter or, DM me, Facebook message, call me. So,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have a lot of emails that I respond to, and I've responded to them here, and I have a lot of Twitter ones. I find that the email sometimes is a little more relevant to what I'm doing as mayor, because I get a lot more things about the city of Fredricton. But here's the other thing about me, and when we talk about each being individuals, I love humor. Humor and laughter and music is a part of my life every day. Every day. And you got to be careful there, because there was somebody tweeting, this actually happened to me, that they were going to see the Titanic, and I saw it, so I sent them a message back, and I said, don't tell me how it ends, I haven't seen it yet. You can't believe the response I got from all over the world. I tweeted it, and I'm laughing. I'm thinking, this is so funny. And people took it seriously. They're trying to help me out. And I said...
Those people don't know where Fredricton is, I guess.
Anyway, so that's the other part of it, too. Sometimes when you're tweeting something, it might seem like a brilliant thing to you, but maybe to that person in Australia that I refer to just doesn't quite get it. But when you mention about what you say and what you don't say, remember, you can follow people. They can follow you. Well, if you get too bizarre and too out there and doing too much, they're just simply going to unfollow you. That's all. And you have the right and the privilege to do that. It's very simple. Follow, unfollow.
Actually, I had a quote I was going to use in mine earlier, and this I think works at this point, because there is an anonymous tweet out there that says, don't worry if you lose followers on Twitter. Even Jesus lost followers. Now, I appreciate that doesn't float all religions, but it's still quite funny. And the point there is you can't be all things to all people, so don't even try. Like, the main thing is be yourself. Be yourself as much as possible. Me being myself, I still have to edit what I put onto Twitter, believe me. So the overexposure part, it's more along the lines, if you're being yourself and you're being genuine, well then great, you're gonna have the people who wanna follow you will, and that's fine. As for other forms of communication, email, phone calls, or anything like that, I'll be quite honest. I am probably the least called or emailed mayor in Canada, and I think it's because my constituents all think I'm going to send them a bill. So,
Just one other little funny thing. There's so much humor here. Like, some politicians actually have people that do their tweeting for them.
That's terrible.
And that's really bad.
It is bad.
That's really bad. So I've even had people say to me, do you do your own tweets? And I said, have you ever seen the spelling? Do you think I would hire somebody to do that if they spelt that atrociously? This is me. Spelling's not my strong strength.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Good morning. Doran Scott. I'm the administrator of the Armed Blue Chair just to the east of Saskatoon, actually. So thank you all for being here. It's been wonderful. It's my first FCM, so I've learned a lot. So if you'll bear with me on the administrative side of things, do your municipalities have Twitter feeds, Facebook pages, and as mayors, councillors, et cetera, has there ever been a conflict between the two? And how was that resolved, perhaps?
Well, yes, we do in Fredericton, and it's all about communicating the message. So when the tennis courts are opening or when the arenas are opening, we will tweet it. And those that are following on that particular feed are only doing it for one reason and one reason only. They want to know about recreation, they want to know about services. So yes, we keep them up to date. If you're going to do it in a community sense like that, you've got to make sure that you're doing it and keeping people posted and up to date, because if you take a two days off or something like that and somebody misses a bus to that, then there's reason to complain. So it's all about communication. And yes, we do in both instances. Haven't seen a conflict. The only conflict is sometimes the information isn't right. If you're going to be informing the public about when this facility is open, then it's got to be right. So it's got to be checked.
The city of Iqualuit has its own face page, but truth be told, the Iqualuit public service announcement is absolutely the better site for informing our community. So we end up just being one of the stakeholders, whether it's myself, our communications manager, or our recreation department tend to be the three that communicate the most on that medium. I'm the only one that actually has a Twitter account. A councillor does, but doesn't tweet usually as a councillor. And our municipal bylaw office does have an account, but rarely uses it. So again, if you don't use it, no one wants to follow you because you're never putting any information on it. And so, but I absolutely agree that's why I said earlier, you want to make sure that your information is accurate. So I'll often contact my staff and sort of say, and they'll tell me, and I'm aware of things are happening, you know, can I tweet about this? Or I'll be asked to tweet about it, and I'm like, okay, I want to make sure I have all the correct information because, as said earlier, once it's out there, it is out there. And if you do make a mistake, which happens because we're human, correct it and explain that I'm sorry, apologize, this is the correct information.
Our community has a Facebook page and a Facebook page and a Twitter or a recreation Twitter account, but none of these things have actually been fully harmonized yet. They were all things that various people in different spots thought would be good to have, and so the administration stuff and the policy things around that are not fully set up, and it's quite unfortunate because like we are going to be talking about these things and these policies going on into the future, but one of the things I'm saying about that is even if you don't have much to say, ensure there's a new message on each one of those things at least once a day. So that way there's something going on. And you can just be saying, well, today's a beautiful day, don't forget to go for a walk in the park, or you know, something nice, or at least it's the be friendly, be happy, you know, live, love, laugh, that kind of thing. At least there's something going on, and then people get used to knowing that they'll go there and they'll look for something of substance most of the time, because that's what you need. Every day you need something of substance. But conflicts between the two, one would hope that when you're delivering the message out within those things, it's basically one or two administrators and they're double checking with each other. So I would say it's in policies that you would have to set that.
Thank you.
I'm just going to check to make sure. Are there any questions from the webcast?
They were already answered. It came through on Twitter.
Oh, very nice.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm from the Kootenays-Verary rural community, and I don't know if this is to boast or not, but I'm probably the only person in this room that's still on a flip phone at pay-as-you-go. And I have kind of a concern as well as a question. So my first concern is that this is my first FCM as well, and I find it very intriguing to look around the room and see so many people doing this. You know, and I'm like, who's looking up? And I come from a small community where my concern is that when we have things going on, we live in a very weather-dependent community where our communication systems can be knocked out quite a few times a year. So my concern is about vulnerability, because when something happens, if people get really pushed to the Twittering or the Facebooking, we then forget how to actually talk to each other or communicate, or even know like what's Village's phone number. It kind of is pushing us into a cultural place that concerns me, where we don't know how to look at each other and talk. And because our systems can go down, if people get so used to that, like I noticed this with Facebook during election time, people were really on there, but then they weren't communicating with people, and then it went down, and people didn't know how to talk. They were losing those connections. So that's kind of my concern, that I'd love input on that. And the second part is actually a question about ownership, because we have an economic development committee that has a Facebook page, and I had some great concerns about what was being said, because it is representing the committee, but we haven't approved it. And Facebook, especially now being publicly traded, who owns the information on there?
Well, actually, I would have thought that once it was out there, it was almost a public thing. Like I appreciate Facebook is publicly traded, but I think that's primarily for the advertising rights and stuff like that. I don't really know how that all worked out, to be quite honest. But once you put it out there, it's out there. So copywriting a tweet or anything like that, I don't think that's something people worry about on that kind of a concept. So the systems down one, though, I find that one particularly interesting because of the fact that we went through last month a very interesting discussion in our community around water quality. And our water quality hadn't changed, but the standards changed where it was no longer a guideline, it was a regulation. And so we all knew it was coming. And we put out all sorts of notifications to people saying, well, this is coming, you're going to have this issue. And then when it actually came, everybody reacted in a way that they thought we were poisoning them. And Manitoba Health was clearly saying we weren't, but that wasn't the point. What we learned was, and I think everybody should take away from this, is it's just another method of communication. Not everybody's, and that was one of the points I was making, like, not everybody's on Facebook, not everybody's on Twitter, not everybody reads their mail. I mean, like, what you have to do is you have to use all forms of communication that are still available to you. Don't abandon the old ones, ever. Don't stop advertising the paper. We're still legal requirements to do that for obviously a number of things, but never stop taking advantage of all the communication that we have, such that if we do have a systems down scenario, well, guess what? One of those systems, email, talking to people, posting in the post office, anything like that, will always, one of them should work. If you've lost all of that, well, then I'm not sure what's going on in your community, but it's never abandon another form of communication to pick up a new one.
I was going to respond to that by referring to my wife, who isn't here, and then I looked up and there she is, standing at the back. And what I was going to say is, when I talk about common sense, sometimes I don't have a lot of it. But when it comes to communication, she does. And one of the things that she mentioned to me early with respect to emailing, which is just as effective and applicable to Twitter or Facebook or anything else, if you don't want to see it on the front page of the paper, then don't say it in any other venue. That's the whole thing. Don't put something on there that you're going to regret. When you talk about the person-to-person, face-to-face, that is so important. That's why I said when we have our Sunday dinner, you're not going to send tweets at the table or check Facebook. That's when you do the face-to-face. That's when the communications takes place. As much as I love to tweet, I'm sitting here, I haven't turned it on, I haven't sent it. I don't think you want to be down there listening to what I have to say, and then all of a sudden see me preoccupied. I want to be here with the audience. That's where the communication is important. So yes, it's a way of communicating, but we still get back to nobody's really set up the etiquette, and we have to do that, and it's going to come sooner or later, but this is happening so quickly.
One of the things I guess maybe I didn't articulate is, like, we had an event going on and we didn't put it on Facebook.
Yes.
And no one came because they want to see it there, which that eliminates a large part of our population. So I'm concerned about the trend going so far that way that we're actually eliminating people out of the communication strategy, because it's, you know, yes, you do both, but that's kind of more what I was talking about, not etiquette.
I know, and some people are saying, you know, newspapers someday may be a thing of the past because we're all on the internet, we're all looking there, and we're all getting our information from a different source. So I guess when, you know, the world is kind of shifting, you either get on the train or stay at the station. I'm not saying it's the best thing to do, but I'm saying if I'm going to communicate with people, it's, you know, it's through these other mediums. If I want to get the crowd at the event, I'm going to have to think, where's the crowd that I can touch and that I can get to fill that event? And if it happens to be Facebook, that's where I'm going to go. Thanks.
Did you want to add anything?
Thanks. Duncan McKinley, Grey County, Ontario. So my question is there any precedent on liability about information put forward that either put forward by myself, say, or someone posing as me that's incorrect? I mean, we have precedent of a head of council making a comment and then council didn't approve a development proposal, but yet the town was found liable and paid damages because the judge felt that one should rely on the comments of head of council as being the comments of the, so I just wondered, like, if I make a bona fide error and put some incorrect information on, how's that liability work?
The internet is right full of bad information.
No kidding.
And you know what? I wouldn't believe hardly anything that I see on the internet. People are going to say some very bad things. They're going to say that about you, about your municipality, and
They
you
do
know,
that in emails now.
absolutely. And it's just another form, and it all goes with the territory. You're getting into case precedenting situations where somebody is going to be sued for something that they said because it was incorrect, because, as the defense attorney would say, they didn't know it was incorrect. They were trying to give you the information. So, you know, it's there's so much misinformation. There's so many wonderful things about the internet, and there's so many terrible, terrible things about the internet. And trying to differentiate what is good, bad, or indifferent is almost subjected to, you know, the individual that's reading the information. So I don't, you know, think that people are going to be liable for something that they say that's not correct. That's getting us into a whole different sphere, and it's going to be a complicated one, and people aren't going to take it seriously. But we're a long way to go on that, you know, filtering it and being... So far that I'm aware of, there's no precedent on somebody that's done something on the internet. I think it's been tried before, but that's a tough one.
Yeah, I'm not sure that either. And sorry, Mayor Madeleine, I was going to say, for the most part, I would expect that the defamation rules still apply there regardless. So like we'll apply the old legislation or the old rules to the new standards, so defamation will be there. So one of the things that you have to know is if you do bona fide make a mistake, a defense is to say A, mistake, and then B, apologize, and then C, try to correct this. Now,
I get a question. What time does highway such and such open up? I phoned the police sergeant. He says we're going to open at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Storm continues. The barricades are still up. The guy drives around barricades at 10 after 10 and has an accident.
I think there's some personal responsibility in that situation.
And qualify the information by saying, to the best of my knowledge, or I think, you know, according to, and try and qualify it. The latest information. Leave yourself a little.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, sorry, you were going to take that.
That's fine.
Good afternoon. Ty Asaf from the town of Barhead. Population is about 4,300, and just like everybody else here, I'm sure the first social media tool everybody's used was Facebook. I've got over maybe 350 followers now, being from friends and now some constituents. I opened up my Facebook before I was elected as an official. I've just joined the Twitter nation, okay, and in the population in Barhead, maybe 1% will tweet. However, everybody follows me on Facebook and understands my statuses. So what I have done is I've synced my Twitter account tweets to my Facebook page. Now, this weekend has been so much fun. I've been tweeting, and everything has been getting hit on my Facebook. Talking to my wife the other day, she said, do you realize you just have plastered Facebook with your tweets? Do you recommend syncing that, or should you go ahead and maybe create another Facebook account and sync that.
I should bring my wife up here because she said the same thing to me when I had Facebook and I had it synced, and she would say, you know all this stuff that you're tweeting is all going on Facebook? So I don't do Facebook anymore, and I'll tell you why. It's a very popular thing, but when I started Facebook a long time ago, it was a personal thing. You know, it was with family, with close friends. So there were a lot of pictures on there, your trips, your vacations, and things like that. The more I got looking at it and the number of people that wanted to follow me, and I'm saying to my wife, who are these people? I don't know them. So all of a sudden it became something that I was sharing with a lot of people that I consider to be personal. So then I got off. My wife still has a Facebook page and she keeps it more personal. So I'm not doing the Facebook thing anymore. I do the Twitter thing, which is more impersonal and it's more information, short, sweet, and to the point. So it's different strokes for different folks.
I don't have a Mayor Madeleine or a professional Facebook account because I did do some analysis to decide that I wasn't prepared to use that medium in that way. But our City of Iqualuit, our communications officer, now is much more engaged and involved. Our recreation department is very engaged and involved in that medium. Once in a blue moon, I find, in the absence of, sort of my staff catching up, it could be after hours or weekend, post some city stuff or respond, but I use it very, very little. But there's no way that I would ever link my Twitter account, either of them, to my Facebook, because I recognize that it would be just too much noise in the wrong medium. So you do, some people do choose to have the links, especially if it is a professional account on one medium and a professional account on another medium, and then maybe it makes sense. But if it's professional and personal, as in the case of of other people, then you just decide, no, it doesn't work.
I have the exact same question or stuff you did, so I want to make sure I spoke to two. I was Facebook first, and it was all friends all the time. I created a professional Facebook page thinking that I would be able to use it for an election for mayor, and then I was acclaimed, and now it was useless. So I created. So when the council changeover happened, I turned it into the mayor's page, right? So it's a professional page, and that's why I was saying, like in my community and like yours, I use the professional page really for the local messaging, okay? So that's where I will put on, coming up this weekend is this stuff and this stuff and this stuff. Or did you know this happened last week? Or something where people might be of interest in the community. I had them linked as well, and what I did with them was I only linked Facebook to Twitter. I didn't ever experience what you guys did, and I could totally see why it would be you can actually do that. You can link one to the other without going back, right? So if you wanted to do that, you wanted to have a professional page for Facebook, and you wanted it to link into your Twitter feed, go ahead. Couple things though. People who are on Facebook who aren't on Twitter don't appreciate hashtags and ats and other crap like that. When you're doing your Facebook feed, you don't put in the hashtags and ats and crap like that. So when it feeds up to Twitter, it becomes a tweet that's in just garble because it doesn't link. So I clued into that a while later, and I disconnected them. So what often happens now is I will do two messages, but I'll do the Facebook one, which will be a nice, long, sort of wonderful thing, and then I'll find a way to make that 140 characters, and I'll put it on Twitter, and I'll make sure it's even shorter than that so I can hashtag Westman, and if I really want somebody to pay attention, I address it to a media. All right, so it becomes what's good for you, but again, you don't know these things until you try them, and so it's exactly that point.
I have to, if I may, Mr. Chairman, these folks are very, very capable of any questions that are coming up, but I do have a lunch engagement that I have at 12, and I have to leave right now. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank all of those that have come out and quickly realize that we're not experts, we're just sort of sharing information. But remember, I haven't seen the Titanic. Don't tell me how it ends. Thanks very much.
And in the grand scheme of the internet, don't believe everything you hear.
Good morning, Doug Gill, Town of Ponoka. Just to bring a different perspective, I have a flip phone that does Sweet Tweet, but I can't send text on it. And if you really want to spend some time in tweeting, sit down with a 14-year-old. You might be able to get a grant from the government for cross-intergenerational. We've had two very serious disasters in Alberta. One was the Pine Lake tornado. When the response teams got into that valley around the lake, there was no communication. The radios wouldn't work. So they had to use satellite at that time, which our emergency response team had. Now, Pine Lake pales in comparison to Slave Lake. And if you want a perspective of how important what we're doing here today is, talk to the mayor. They had no communications.
She was here, she
Their
left.
radio was down, their nothing.
There, okay, I can see you behind there, she's here.
So we really need to, if we're not interested in doing it, be a follower. Watch what's going on, respond when you wish, but learn how to do it and do it well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
I can just speak to the issue. I mean, Iqualuit suffers a disproportionate number of times where our communication goes down. We had the satellite actually go out, and anyone sort of, I think, north of 55 all of a sudden experience a complete comms outage. And I was in Ottawa. But you learn quickly about how to sort of fill in the communication gaps because CBC stayed up, their Twitter stayed up, and so I was able to communicate, back home via Twitter to CBC. And there were other times when our power goes out and some comms go down and then other comms stay up. So you end up adapting to the circumstances, and you figure out really quickly how you have to get the message out to your community, no matter what the circumstance is, whether it's literally on the phone tree or if your phone goes down. I mean, we've experienced it all, I would have to say, in the last year and a half, the combination, and for the most part, that's when the agencies all come together, and the cooperation, level of cooperation is fantastic.
looks like a question from the net.
Yes, this is from our webcast. Apparently, we've got a bunch of people watching from Lethbridge, Alberta. This is from Jeffrey Kaufman. Does anyone on the panel have a social media emergency communication plan? How do you control the message? And I'll let you speak straight to Alberta.
No.
We don't have a social media plan as part of our emergency plan yet, but we are in the process of developing our emergency response plan. There's a broad sort of aspect to it, and the various agencies like the RCMP, the Government of Nunavut, the City of Iqualuit, and a few others I know I'm missing, are looking exactly at the issue of how we do communicate under an emergency situation. And to date, I can tell you, and only speaking from my experience as mayor, as I tend to, as I said earlier, because I'm so involved and engaged in social media on Facebook and on Twitter, and very close relationship with the media, that I will often be asked to be the person who provides that message. And so when we had an incident with a gunman in the hospital, the RCMP was feeding information to my staff, and my staff was feeding it to me and saying, could you please get this message out? And people stay away from the hospital right now. All of appointments have been canceled, and then provided the updates when I was asked to. So it's in the absence of a plan at this point in time, we do have a good working relationship, and it's worked to date so far.
I'm going to take that, and thank you for that. Actually, it made me think there was a member of my council who was here who was on the emergency management or emergency planning team, but I don't think he's here anymore. The concept's absolutely important. When I said earlier, don't abandon any other form of communication, keep them all, and then take advantage of these ones. That's entirely true, and it should be in this case as well. You would think that your Facebook page and your Twitter account would be something that if people have come to rely on messaging from you, that's where they'll go to get their messaging again in an emergency. So it's absolutely important to do that. So I will, thanks to Lethbridge, apparently we're big in Lethbridge, I will, thanks to Lethbridge now, ensure that that becomes part of our policy discussions around it, and we will take that to our emergency response group, our planners, because it's I expect they're talking about it, but I expect that they're not necessarily engaged on it fully themselves. The members of that committee, if I'm recalling correctly, are probably on Facebook and not much else. So thank you.
And maybe I'll just add, it's really important to be timely. So when that incident that I just gave an example of, with the gunman at a hospital, I won't say which level of government, but nonetheless, it wasn't ours.
Order of government. Order.
Declared 2.5 hours after the incident that the incident was over. So if you decide that you are going to engage in social media, it must be timely. It really doesn't help to use that medium, especially under those circumstances, and be too late. It's not helpful.
That takes me to one other thing, if I could. When I was talking about mine and how you engage the media in it, and Brad talked about that too, the media will always be calling or making stories on that. A couple points. One, it did work because just on Thursday, I received an email asking me for an interview from somebody who thought that Virden was going through a rebirth. I had pointed out a few things that we had been able to do in the past couple of years, but my response was, well, thank you very much. You just confirmed my thesis that the media is paying attention, and I see it as you're just paying attention. But it can also come back to you in a way. So even though these guys are saying always, Brad in particular, always respond, always get an answer back. There was a situation, not the same at all as what Iqualuit was or what Madeleine was just describing, but what Iqualuit went through. But we had a young gentleman, he was 14 years old. He was killed in a dirt bike accident, and it happened about 3 miles west of my town. Well, the media saw that they knew somebody in town that they could contact immediately who might have a clue, and they constantly contacted me. And I'm sitting there going, guess what, guys? This is not a community event. This is a private story. And you can do that. You can edit your own stuff. If you do not believe it's something they need to get from you, tell them. Just tell them. Treat them the same way as you would on the street, or if they were just calling you and asking you a story. And I think they respected me and expected that response, but I don't think they'll have any problems with it. Then they gave me opportunity to, say a community word for it, et cetera. They give the mayors a chance to. I barely knew the family. My daughter was the same age as the boy, same class. And I said, again, that wasn't my job to do. I told them if I ever learned, some families do this, so find a family spokesperson. This family didn't even choose to do that, which was fine. That was their choice, and I left it to be their choice. So you can do that too.
All right, I don't see any more questions, so let's give our speakers a big round of applause.
I was really surprised you all showed up. I expected 3 people.
Yeah, it was a lot more people than I expected too.